Today I'm bringing you the fastest, strongest rogue build that lets you breeze through the leveling process in Season 1 at lightning speed, and that's not an exaggeration. This Twisting Blades rogue build is even stronger in Season 1. The combination of insane AoE damage and near maximum movement speed will let you clear dungeons, malignant tunnels, and the campaign with absolute ease. The build, thanks to our rogue specializations, also has unparalleled single target DPS as well, and then when we add in the new Malignant hearts from this season, the build is taken to stratospheric levels. A massive bonus in Season 1 is that the key aspect for this build you can now unlock at level 1, so the build is super powerful right out of the gate. There's no doubt in my mind that this build is the strongest leveling build out there, and once you play with it, you'll find every other playstyle pretty dull. The first ability you want to unlock is your basic skill Puncture, whereby you throw a dagger towards your enemy. Every third cast will have a chance to slow your enemy, and if it's a critical strike, then it will guarantee slow them. You don't want to level this beyond rank 1 out of 5, as there's far more important skills to unlock, and there's very little return gain from adding in extra skill points. Make sure you get Enhanced Puncture for more energy generation, and more importantly Fundamental Puncture, which splits the dagger into 3 throws with an overall boost to damage, and more importantly for the build, it applies Vulnerability. Vulnerability applies a debuff to enemies, so you hit them for a minimum of 20% more damage. Our main ability is Twisting Blades, which essentially stabs the enemy with your dagger or sword, and then after a short period of time, these blades boomerang back to you, dealing even more damage on their way back and damaging everything in its path. You'll want to make Twisting Blades 5 out of 5 pretty early on. Make sure to pick up Enhanced Twisting Blades for even more damage, and improve Twisting Blades to daze enemies, which becomes important later in the build. The only mandatory aspect for this build is going to be Blade Dancer's aspect, which when your Twisting Blades return to you, they orbit to you for a short period of time, thereby dealing even more damage. It's obtained from Jalal's Vigil in Scott's Glen, and in Season 1 you can get this at level 1 if you want. Be sure to put this aspect onto your two-handed weapon so you double the benefit you gain from it. At level 15 you gain access to the rogue specific questline, which unlocks combo points, which further enhances your Twisting Blades. And at this point your rotation becomes simple. Use Puncture 3 times to build up combo points, and then use your Twisting Blades, which with 3 combo points now does way more damage, and it grants you a staggering 60% movement speed bonus. For general dungeon gameplay and fighting regular and elite mobs, combo points is going to be the way forward. For bosses, you want to switch to Inner Sight, which is unlocked slightly later on. Here you build up your Inner Sight gauge by damaging the selected target, and then you can spam your Twisting Blades for 4 seconds without using any energy resource. This, in combination with the Blade Dancer's aspect, orbit damage, is going to absolutely nuke bosses. In this build we have 2 movement based abilities. The first one you want to unlock is Dash, which you only want 1 point in, which gives you 2 charges that lets you maneuver the battlefield effectively while dealing some damage. This is also going to be very important for creating distance between yourself and the Twisting Blades as they boomerang back to damage more enemies in their path. Make sure to pick up Enhanced Dash for that critical strike damage bonus. Your second movement ability is Shadow Step, which you want 1 point into, which is going to be our main ability, which breaks crowd control thanks to it making you unstoppable, which is going to help you when you get frozen, feared, or slowed, which is the main reason most players die. Enhanced Shadow Step is going to boost your critical strike chance by 8% against that enemy, and then Methodical Shadow Step adds a stun on top as well. You definitely want to pick up 3 points in Weapon Mastery fairly early on as well. With daggers we gain 15% extra damage to healthy enemies, and with swords we gain a flat 9% extra damage. For the purposes of leveling, there's no preference between swords or daggers here, just pick the one with the highest DPS. You also want 3 points into Concussive, which is going to increase critical strike chance by 12% against enemies which are knocked back. Put 1 point into Trick Attack, because when you use Twisting Blades it dazes enemies, and then Trick Attack gives you a chance to knock them down, thereby activating Concussive for that 12% critical strike chance bonus. We actually don't get any active skills from the Subterfuge section of the skill tree. Here you just want 3 points into Exploit and 3 points into Malice to further boost your damage. For this build, when we're dealing with large groups of enemies, we're going to be using Shadow Imbuement because Shadow causes explosions and is great for taking out groups of enemies. What Shadow Imbuement does is power up your next 2 attacks with Shadow Energy. In this build, that's going to be primarily your Twisting Blades attack, but Dash and Shadow Step can also be imbued. Remember, the initial stab, the returning boomerang, and the orbit all benefit from the imbuement. It's honestly nuts. Enhanced Shadow Imbuement gives you even more critical strike chance, a whopping 15% against injured enemies infected by Shadow Imbuement, and then Blended Shadow Imbuement makes enemies affected by the initial explosion vulnerable. We also pick up Poison Imbuement for this build because when you want to deal with bosses or you want large single target DPS, Poison Imbuement is going to be a lot better because it applies a damage over time. Enhanced Poison Imbuement increases the poison damage over time by 1 second longer, and more importantly unlocks Blended Poison Imbuement, whereby critical strikes deal 75% increased poisoning damage. You want Shadow Imbuement to be 5 out of 5 on this build, but you can keep Poison Imbuement at 1 out of 5. Put 1 point into Shadow Crash so you can unlock Consuming Shadows, which you want 3 points into as soon as possible. This will generate tons of energy so you're never low on that resource. This build doesn't rely on any ultimate skill, which when leveling all have too high of a cooldown timer to really be effective. Instead here you want 1 point into Adrenaline Rush to unlock 3 points into Haste. Our key passive, which you want to unlock as soon as possible, is going to be Momentum, which when you gain 3 stacks gives you damage reduction, more energy regeneration, and a movement speed bonus. Honestly, 3 stacks of Momentum just speeds up gameplay so much. To finish the build off, go back and put 3 points into Sturdy for 12% close damage reduction, 3 points into Stutter Step to increase movement speed, and then put your final 2 points into Innovation. For aspects, we already mentioned Blade Dancer's aspect as your only mandatory aspect to place onto your crossbow while leveling. Remember, Twisting Blades damage is going to be determined by your sword or dagger, so you can use your crossbow as a stat stick with Blade Dancer's aspect without replacing it much while leveling, and it won't reduce your DPS. Other offensive aspects to keep a lookout for or obtain from dungeons include Edgemaster's aspect, which is going to boost damage depending on how much energy you have left. Remember, with Inner Sight, you'll be at maximum energy when it's active, so it really does boost boss DPS. Aspect of Inner Calm, which again is going to boost damage when standing still, which you can do on bosses pretty easily in Twisting Blades. Aspect of the Expectant, which increases attack speed of your Twisting Blades when you use your basic attack Puncture. And then finally, Aspect of Corruption, which improves the potency of your imbuement skills even further. Defensive aspects aren't necessary on tier 1, but when you're pushing for the capstone dungeon to unlock tier 3, I'd look out for these 3. Aspect of Disobedience, which gives you armor stacks when causing damage. It's really helpful, and since the nerf, I'd place this on your amulet for 50% extra bonus. Aspect of Might, which gives you 20% damage reduction for a short time after using your puncture attack. Very useful. And then finally, Aspect of Stolen Vigor, which is a random drop, unfortunately, unlike the other 2 aspects, and gives you healing per stack of momentum. Honestly, if you get this, you won't need to worry about healing at all because you constantly have 3 stacks of momentum with this build. In terms of Malignant Hearts, if you haven't already seen my video on the fastest farm for Wrathful Hearts, the most powerful type of Malignant Hearts, which you can do at any tier, then go watch that video first. In terms of Wrathful Hearts, you want to look out for Caged Heart of the Barber, which is going to be the most sought after heart for this build, which essentially causes the target to absorb critical strike damage and explode into a more powerful AoE effect. I actually didn't find much luck getting this at lower levels, so a great alternative is Caged Heart of the Malignant Pact, or the Vaushon Heart equivalent of this, which is going to give you some great bonuses like attack speed or refilling your resource. Other regular hearts to look out for include Caged Heart of the Prudent Heart, which makes you immune when you lose your life in a single hit and can be an absolute lifesaver, especially on hardcore. Caged Heart of Revenge, which suppresses incoming damage. Even though this build doesn't have any subterfuge skills to take advantage of the explosion effect afterwards, just the 10 to 20% damage reduction is huge for survivability. So there's my Twisting Blades rogue build that will have you breezing through the leveling process and even beyond into the end game. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Diablo builds as we get deeper into Season 1. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.